It is 1:35 in the morning, January 3rd, and I'm still exhausted somehow. I don't understand, but, and I know I'm going to say this every single time when I start talking, is that I'm going to try and fix the profile, because it's weird, blurry, and it's not exactly what I wanted, but I couldn't really today. For some reason, I was just so tired. Tomorrow, I should have pretty much the house to myself, so I will be able to do some things that I want, hopefully. But the thing that I kind of want to talk about today, because yesterday and the day before, I was able to get some of the introduction stuff that I wanted to do. Stuff that I felt was necessary more to say, as the first two videos of hopefully a year-long series. And I guess another thing I should probably mention is that when I record these, I listen to music because I find it very difficult to just hear myself talk in silence. So I usually put on a playlist. So my train of thought kind of goes every so often just because I'll start listening to the song instead of talking. But what I want to talk about today is TV shows. Because when my friend was over, he actually never saw Ted Lasso. I actually only seen the third season because my parents were watching it at the time that the third season came out and I didn't know it existed. So I just started watching it with them. And so then we started watching it and I'm like, damn, this is a really good show. So I just finished the second season tonight. And it really got me thinking on why that was a good show. Like, it I don't know, it feels weird. Like, why is that so endearing, so funny, so entertaining to watch when it really isn't an terribly, like, interesting idea, or to me, an interesting setting, because I find that I'm more interested in more fantasy, like, action elements, specifically because I mostly enjoyed anime and Arcane. I've talked about Arcane, but this is one of the first times that I've really enjoyed a show that's this type of thing, and it got me thinking of what I think makes a good show. And I mean, you have to designate categories to a show because some shows are not aiming for the same type of thing as other ones. Like Ted Lasso is not essentially aiming to be an entertainment visually. It's supposed to be entertaining, storyline, comedic, like endearing, like heartwarming. That's what the show aims for. But then another show like Arcane is supposed to be for one, is an animated thing, and a whole different thing to talk about when animated for live action. But because the direct art form is involved with it, they can be creative in that sense, so it's visually entertaining, and fight scenes and all that are entertaining visually nonetheless. But like Arcane also has a huge plot that's so interwoven with each other and complex that it makes it that way, and also the characters themselves are good. Like, I understand that there's a baseline for everything. Like, a plot has to be good, a character has to be good, it has to look good, it has to sound good. Like, there are things that are mandatory pretty much for a show to be good. But like, why are these ones the good ones? Like, all I can think of, at least for Ted Lasso, is that it's the dialogue is so good, and like there's not a lot of downtime. Like, because there's only 30-minute episodes or 45 minutes, they're not terribly long. Like, to me, the shows that are more limited seasons outside of anime, I'm used to being an hour long and more complex, and it feels more like each episode is its own storyline. And that is true for Ted Lasso, but it almost feels more densely packed. And it's able to keep the pacing in an appropriate manner where it never feels like something is progressing too fast. Yet the story seems that it's has a consistent pace. And another thing about Ted Lasso that I really appreciate, especially when it comes to character Nate, who I absolutely despise, which is a good marking of a good character and a good actor, that even within inspiration moments, I don't know, I'm phrasing that wrong, but moments of inspiration and heartwarming moments within the team itself, the directors never fail to show character development within Nate's, even though the character development, I would argue, is backwards. Like, in the last episode, when they're getting that inspirational speech, like, in the locker room in halftime, the camera goes through everybody and it then holds on Nate, and you get that eye roll, you get that almost, I don't know how to describe it, like, it's not disgust, but it's just annoyance and loathing of the other characters, and they're able to slip those moments in everywhere. Like, in the beginning, in the first season, there was a scenario where Ted is talking to Rebecca, and he asks, what do you love the most, or something like that, what brings you back to home? And her eyes go to the biscuits, and comes back up and says nothing. And then camera switches back over to Ted, and it goes, and he looks down at the biscuits and looks back up and says, all right, that's fine. So it's just these small moments that you're able to pick up on that create a story within the overarching story of that. And it's not, I love that the character development is not specific for a scene. Like, the scenes aren't really obviously, this is for this character, or this is for this plot. The scenes are so interwoven with each other that the moments for that team is also the development for Nate. Showing Ted's character of being outgoing and kind of overall loving in general, and then seeing Rebecca's, like, appreciation for the biscuits that she receives, but also showing that she really doesn't want to be involved, specifically within the first season. It's just kind of this really beautiful dynamic. But then there's, like, other, like, I guess you could say that specifically the storyline within Ted Lasso is just a really nice storyline. They cover topics that don't feel forced, like mental health, they cover divorce, they cover other things that are just so well handled that, I don't know, it's just beautiful in a way. But then I kind of want to turn to Arcane, because Arcane is, I've said it before, but probably one of my favorite shows of all time. But it's good for a completely different reason than Ted Lasso is good. And I understand that there's a complete genre shift and medium shift even. But what makes Arcane so good, for one, is the art. I mean, it has the same attention to detail as I always say that Ted Lasso had within the character developments, and it was just the art itself and the facial movements and everything feels so natural but yet otherworldly. Like, if you look at Jinx's movement within the second season, I think maybe towards the third act, she moves inhuman, but yet you can understand that that's a human doing that. It's such a beautiful way of creating this fantasy and otherworldly effect, but put it still in the context of knowing that each character is human, and they're supposed to be like that. Like, there are, like, I don't know, there are shows where you're watching that you're supposed to understand that we can't do that, and that's fine. Like, I would say, like, I want to say, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Nobody can do those things, and you're supposed to feel like nobody can do those things. But in Arcane, there's nobody who has very, like, a so specific talent. Like, I guess, like, oh my god, I'm forgetting her name. I want to say, like, Mel. She can, do the barriers and things. I mean, Jinx herself has been injected with that. Warwick, for one. Like, there's these characters that are not supposed to reflect actual humans, but they have created them and animated them and shown their powers in a way that it creates this feeling that they are closer to us and to the normal people within the show than anything else. And I think that's really cool, because I always have this idea that for a game that I want to make, that to create a world that is similar to what we are, and that we can recognize everything, and we already feel comfortable, and comfortable I think is the right word, to all these places, the way that people act, the way that people are, like, it feels natural, yet there's an element that creates this otherworldly effect. Like, I don't know what other, out of the top of my head, I don't know a show that necessarily like that. I mean, Arcane is the one I can think of, but I'm using that as an example already. But is that to create familiarity within the settings and the characters, that we can instantly relate to them or instantly feel for them, but also have a setting and environmental otherworldliness. Like, I kind of like how... I want to say Star Wars, because that's usually my baseline for that, because I've always really enjoyed that everything is advanced, yet it is locked behind the technology from the late 70s, early 80s, because that's when they were made. And that's a different scenario, but I like that idea of being familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. And that's why I think Arcane was so good, is because all the characters and the settings and the conflicts and everything going on was unfamiliar yet so familiar that you can relate to the character struggling with things. You can understand what made Powder go to Jinx, Silco's motivation, especially with the added context of the second seasons. Like, in the second season, you understand Caitlyn's drive to want to kill Jinx, and you understand then why. It felt so human, but it put into a world that was so out there that it created this beautiful area. I don't know. But I feel like that's why I felt Arcane was good. I mean, that's just a single facet of why Arcane was good, but I think that's what makes it different from Ted Lasso. And then I guess another thing that I really, the other one that I kind of want to mention, and within a different set of contexts, is Violet Evergarden, which is on Netflix, I believe. And I'm not ashamed to admit it, but that after every single episode, I cried. Because the stories are so beautiful and thought out, and the animation itself is colorful and all that. But it's specifically the stories are curated so beautifully, and I love it. It's that ability to connect with a viewer. Like, the one that sticks with me the most out of Violet Evergarden is when Violet Evergarden goes to this mother who's dying, which evidently shown in the episode, and she starts writing letters, and you find out later that she's writing 50 letters, or how many letters, for her daughter, for her daughter's birthdays in the future, because she will die before them. And at the end, you get a montage of her reading them and seeing her life advance, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. But it's just so beautiful about Violet Evergarden is that it's not about Violet Evergarden for a majority of the time. It's about the characters and how they interact with each other and their personal stories and how Violet Evergarden is helping them. But it also allows, with her not being the focus majority of the time, it allows Violet Evergarden to have her own kind of development, because we understand now what was important through seeing the seeing the stories that she experienced through the eyes of somebody else from the outside, creating a very cool dynamic within the characters that it made it more personable. And I don't know, that's just so beautiful. And I know that I'm pretty much just rambling, and it may not make sense to a lot of people, but in my mind, this makes sense and I can see it. And because those are the, like if I want to say the best shows that I've ever seen, it's Arcane, Violet Evergarden, 86, Sonny Boy, Heavenly Delusion. I guess Ted Lasso would actually be up there right now. I'm probably blanking on some shows right now that I can't think of, because I know there's some regular shows that I haven't, that, so I don't want to just say that some of the best shows I've seen are anime, but, it's something, I can't think of it right now. But so those are definitely some of my favorites for all different reasons. Ted Lasso, because it makes me laugh and is very motivating. Arcane, because it's exciting and it's kind of like, it gives us that vibe of fighting the final boss and kind of like that swagger and that coolness. That's so cool. And then 86 is a mix of action and emotional like breakdowns, and so good because the ending is amazing. Violet Evergarden, I already said, is because the story is so beautiful. I think Sonny Boy is probably one of the best coming of age stories I have ever seen. It is so hard to explain, so I'm not going to, but it is utterly beautiful. And then Heavenly Delusion, I think, has one of the best non-linear kind of storytelling that I've seen, and it makes it so good watching back and understanding the context from the future and the past within the show. And so those are my favorite, and there's so many facets to why those shows are good, and so many ways that I probably can't explain why those shows are good. But it's just what I can say right now and what makes them good in my heart.